So here's kind of my reason I got this issue. My review of Technologized Desire by D. Harlan Wilson. So that was pretty cool for me. Doubt I'll ever be in the New York Review of Science Fiction again. So very excited to be in here. Next review is The Infinities by John. The review is by Paul Kincaid, and the book here is by John Banville. It's published from Picador in London. Now, Paul Kincaid is just a prolific reviewer, often in the New York Review of Science Fiction. You see his reviews in Inner Zone, you see his reviews in a lot of places. Read a really interesting review he wrote of John Kessel's collection, recent collection, The Baum Guide to Financial Independence, or The Baum Plan for Financial Independence. I can never remember it off the top of my head, and other stories. And based on that, I looked up what other stories and books and works that Paul has reviewed, and it turned out, sure enough, he's in the same issue that I ended up being, right next to me. So that was pretty cool. In a quick word, when I submitted the review, I didn't hear back, and I thought, well, I guess I didn't pick it up. So kind of moved on, and the one day I got a Google alert on my name that Locus has an online listing of the contents of the major magazines, and it just so happened my name was there, and it showed that I'd reviewed this book in this issue, and so that's how I found out. Oh, let me go back to what what Paul says about the Infinities. Basically, kind of sets up what Mr. Banville's other themes have been, taking inspiration from science, looking at science as an act of creativity, and then also the fall of family and the big houses and tradition. And he kind of puts those together, Mr. Kincaid says, in this book, The Infinities. And so that's kind of where this review goes. The next review is Of the Empress of Mars by K.H. Baker, reviewed by Gwyneth Jones. And the next is another essay from Tom Purdom, When I Was Writing a Literary Memoir, Part 7. So I don't know if this is really part of something bigger or not. I got a few seconds left. So this is a review by Peter Rawlik of The Mall of Cthulhu by Seamus Cooper for Nightshade Books. It's a genre-crossing work of urban fantasy. And I want to quickly, there's some readings here from the New York Review of Science Fiction. Has a reading series. I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to go ahead and slow back down. I'll split this into two sections. Another review by Michael Levy of The Stars Blue Yonder by Sandra McDonald. And here, this was actually pretty cool. This is Christopher Kokinos, Science and Empathy in James Cameron's Avatar, a response to Gary Westfall. So this isn't something I'm not familiar with. This is basically a response to another review. So this is a review of the Locus magazine review by Gary Westfall, which is called here A Damning Critique of Avatar. And this is kind of a response to that, calling that just a monumental misreading of the film. And goes on to kind of make a case that actually Cameron did some pretty interesting things as far as science and empathy are concerned in Avatar. Here I mentioned quickly this screed. Screeds are just letters of comment, and this was pretty cool. Makes me wish I had done something like this for Bullspec, so maybe I'll steal that idea. The first one is short enough to read in full, and it's just kind of humorous to me. From Marcia Pierce from Ramsey, New Jersey, just received New York Review of Science Fiction number 257 with an article by John J. Pierce. Thank you for letting me know that my husband had moved to Montclair. So who was that man in bed with me last night? So that's not something that you would typically, I think, see in many letters to the editor, but I found it pretty funny. Next one, I'm not going to talk about all this in too in-depth, but next one from Jennifer Stevenson from Chicago, Illinois, talking about The Time Traveler's Wife, saying that the film reviewer got it, but the book reviewer didn't get it, in Jennifer's opinion, that the book should not be read as a science fiction book, and if you try to read it that way, you're going to find the plot hard to find. You should read it in as an emotional relationship book, not as a science fiction book. So, I mean, it was a pretty well written, almost a mini essay in the letter here. So that was pretty cool. And the back here, it's an editorial from David G. Hartwell and the editors. And I'm not going to do the whole thing here, but mainly there's a couple quotes in here that were pretty interesting. Kind of talks about how science fiction and fantasy sales held up through the year for the most part, and main thing I wanted to remember from this was a couple quotes. One is he compares the DRM system of ebooks to a feudal system where serfs don't actually own the property, the lords own it. This is the stuff of paranoid science fiction novels, he says. So that was I think a pretty apt comparison. And he talks about mass market paperbacks due to the economic issues kind of becoming the vehicle, and people weren't buying as many hardbacks, so the mass market paperbacks kind of the king. Talks a little bit about some economics of book stuff that kind of I don't quite get yet. And then he closes with he's optimistic about science fiction, talking about in the 60s there were lots of books and magazines being published, but only about a dozen writers were making what one might call a living from science fiction. And it was a happy, vigorous field artistically, even if most of its writers were part-time. We could be happy in that way again. So that's pretty much the New York Review of Science Fiction. I know I forgot a couple of things that I really enjoyed when I read it, and I'm not going to remember it now. But again, a collection of just really strong essays, some reviews. Really enjoyed the review of the Kosher Guide to Imaginary Animals, and there you have it. So thanks for listening, and hope you guys might check out the New York Review of Science Fiction and read my review. Thanks.